I distract easily. So 4 years sober. Start with that. And my story's a little different than most people's story. A lot of us have the rough childhood. My childhood wasn't the best, but I was raised with my grandmother and my grandfather, who were amazing people of God. My grandmother took me to church. I slept under the pews because we went to church so much. I was raised in a godly home with lots of love. My parents, not as much. My dad was an alcoholic. He would get sober for a few years and then he'd fall off the wagon. Then he'd get sober for a few years and he'd fall off the wagon. And that was my whole childhood. But I had determined in myself that if I never stopped drinking, I'd never have to quit. That's what I always said. Once I became old enough, I was like, no, I won't drink, because if I don't start, I won't have to quit. So that was always my motto. In 2011, my father committed suicide. He had relapsed, and he literally stuck a .22 rifle in his mouth and shot himself. I really struggled with that. I got married really young to my husband, still my husband today. He's a preacher. I'm a preacher's wife, 4 years sober. Been married for 21 years. So do that math. As a preacher's wife, I fought this addiction. So it's not immune to anyone. It doesn't matter who you are. Satan will do his best to come and to fight you. Maybe more so when you think you're just doing great and you're living for God, you're doing everything you should do. I was a young mom. I had 2 children, young. I worked in childcare. I raised my babies. I went to church. I did everything I should do. And then once that happened with my father, I couldn't understand why. God, I've done everything that you've told me to do. I'm living the way that I feel like I should, what the Bible says. So why would you take my father that way? And the kicker is I had finally gotten that relationship with my father when he passed away. We were finally close and would visit, and he would spend time with my children. So it was such a hard hit on me. But I had determined I'm going to live for God. I'm not going to backtrack. Satan's like, no, we don't. I got a couple more tricks up my sleeve, because he knows what he can do. And my husband is an amazing man. A lot of you have met him and know him. He's great. But he's not a real affectionate, emotional person. He's just not. If I cry in a movie, he's like, dude, what is wrong with you? I mean, I do it to him too, so I can't be too mad. But he really struggled with how to help me through the suicide and the grieving process. I spoke to my dad probably an hour, maybe 2 hours before he passed away. And I was like, he was going to get me some green beans. His garden was his life, and I was going to can them, and we split them. That's just what we did. I was like, I'll stop by after work, and I didn't. I sent my husband instead, because I had 2 little ones, and I was like, I'm going to take them home, put them down for a nap. So I had such guilt on what could I have done. I seen him every day. I went there every day. What could I have done differently? And I really struggled, and Satan used that to tear me and my husband apart, because he didn't really know how to deal with what I was going through mentally anyways. So it created this divide between us, and the divide just grew. And I started resenting my husband, because he was a preacher. So of course he's like, no, read your Bible, we need to go to church, let's pray through this, and I was like, no, it's not helped so far. And he took my dad's still gonna be gone. So in 2015, I moved out. I was gonna live my life. I was done being a preacher's wife. It's not gonna be a preacher's life anymore. I was done with it. I was gonna do my own thing. In my own thing, started drinking. Did I mention my dad was an alcoholic? Within 6 months' time, I was drinking a 1/5 of vodka, probably at least every other night. Within 2 years' time, it became 1/2 gallon every other night. And it was just vodka. I mean, I just drank it out the jug. I didn't care. I wanted to numb the guilt from not being there for my father. I wanted to numb the guilt of what I had done to my family by walking out. I just didn't want to feel anything. So I just kept drinking. I was a working alcoholic. I still went to work. My close family knew, and some other people that they knew something was going on, but they didn't really know the extent of what was going on. a little over, and my husband, God love him, he prayed for me, he loved me, I went to rehab twice, because he wanted me to. Well, the first time was because he wanted me to, and I didn't want to be there, I didn't care, I was just going through the motions. I was ready to go back home and just do whatever I needed to do to get out of there. When I got out of rehab the first time, I moved back home. He's like, let's work, God put us together, there's a reason. So I moved back home. I was still hiding alcohol in my clothes bins, and I drink wine, put some fruit juice in it, because then you just smell the grape juice, in your mind you think you can get away with it, but people are not nearly as dumb as you think they are. So in October of 2018, I'm talking blackout drunk, and my husband came home from work. He's like, I'm done. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. It's been how many years? I can't do it anymore. Like, I love you, but I can't do it anymore. And he kicks me out. And so I went to my sister's house, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Which I was so drunk then, it didn't matter. I was suicidal. I just wanted it over. I just wanted the pain to stop. I just wanted to stop the guilt and the pain and all the agony that I felt. So I admitted myself to the hospital for treatment. I was like, okay, I've got to do something. In the ER, your brain doesn't work well when you're in that mindset. I was like, I'm going to take this hospital gown and wrap it around my throat. I mean, really, I'm going to let go before. But that was my mindset. I just wanted it to end. I wanted it to be over with. Like, I done felt my family would be better off without me. I'd caused them so much pain. God has different plans. And so they decided they were going to send me to Our Lady of Peace for some mental health and, sobriety, and all of that. So I get in the ambulance, and I'm sitting in the ambulance, and I'm laying there, and I'm thinking, like, what have I allowed my life to come through? We had a beautiful family, a beautiful home. If you looked at us from the outside, our marriage looked perfect until I moved out. Like, it took everyone by surprise. No one knew what was going on. So I'm in the ambulance. Of course, they strapped me down because I'm suicidal. And I just start praying because I was raised in church. I knew God. I knew that God had a plan, but I didn't want to talk to him. I didn't want to have anything to do with him. But at that moment, I realized I had literally hit rock bottom. There was nowhere else to go or do. So I started praying in the ambulance. I was strapped down, arms down, everything. And I just started praying. I was like, God, you've got to fix my marriage. Like, I love my husband. I don't know why I keep hurting my family and doing what I'm doing. I need you to fix my marriage. Like, God, you have to fix my marriage, as I'm crying in the ambulance. And God told me no. He said no. I said, what? Surely that was not God telling me no. I was like, but God, you have to fix my marriage. My children are counting on me, my husband. He's like, no. And I was so confused. Because that still small voice. And I was like, what's that? That wasn't God. It was. Then God told me, you have to fix your family. You have to do what you need to do to make it right. You have to prove. You have to be all in. You have to be all in for me. All in. I was like, okay, I'm all in. Like, what else do I have left? I'm all in. I will live for you. I will worship you. I will do whatever I need to do. And he's like, prove it. What? I'm in the back of an ambulance, tied down on a gurney. He's like, prove it. I'm like, okay, God, whatever you want me to do. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. I'm all in. I'll do it. He said, raise your hands and thank me for it. Thank me for restoring your family. Thank me for healing you. So I look over, and there's this really cute little EMT, little sweet girl, and I'm like, this mug's really gonna think I lost my mind. Like, she's really, like, they already are taking me to Our Lady of Peace, so now they're convinced, like, yeah, she's going to the right place. But I was like, okay, what? Raise your hands and thank me for it. And so I did. Of course, my arms are down, and I raised my hands, and I tear up because I can remember that exact moment as I was laying there in that ambulance. And within a second, God took that stony heart that couldn't love myself or anyone else. And it was just this relief that washed over me. And I knew in that moment I had had a Damascus Road experience, like Saul turned into Paul, that he had showed up and he had answered. So I was like, I don't need to go. I don't need to go. Take me But I went on to Our Lady of Peace, and of course I still had my phone at that time, so I was messaging my husband. I was like, look, like, God just showed up. He's like, okay, yeah, he did. I'm like, but for real, seriously, like, God showed up. Like, he showed up, like God changed, like, as I knew God had changed me. Like, there's no way to even describe that feeling. Husband's like, don't text me again. I was like, oh crap. So I get to Our Lady of Peace, and for some reason, God gave me the phone number of a couple in our church that we were really, really close. And most days, I can't tell you phone numbers. I just look them up in my phone. But he laid that one in my heart. And so I called this family that we were really close to and spoke with him and told him what had happened. And he's like, Valerie, like, that's God's son showed up. Like, God's done a work. We have been praying for this. So I ended up only being in Our Lady of Peace for like 2 days. And so then I went and I stayed with that couple in our family. Mind you, this guy is like literally one of my husband's absolute best friends. So it was a little awkward. And my husband even asked me, don't come to our church. I don't want you coming to church. Like, I have to deal with our family. I have to deal with, my children were so mad at me they wouldn't talk to me because I had done some damage. But I had told God, I'm all in. I'm all in. So whatever it takes, if it means that my family never is restored, if it means that I'm divorced with 2 children and it takes me years to gain my children's trust, whatever it takes, God, I'm all in. That was October 31st is when I woke up at Our Lady of Peace. So October 30th is when I was there. Thanksgiving, it was, November 22nd, I got divorce papers in the mail. Broke my heart. I was like, oh, are you kidding me? But I had decided, he had been praying, this man had been praying for me, fasting for me, asking other saints to pray for me for 3 years that God would deliver me from this. And God's done delivered me, so I just want to be like, look, like God has answered your prayer. But there was hurt there. And you can't just expect that to just go away just because God's worked on your heart. You have to ask God to work on their hearts as well. And it takes time. And they have to be willing to allow God to heal that hurt. Because if they don't have that relationship, then you can't just make it appear. So we ended up meeting, and I was attending church elsewhere because he didn't want me to attend church there. And it took a while. God finally dealt with his heart. And we got back together. Our marriage is wonderful now, but there's still times that Satan tries to put that little nudge in there, like, oh, well, remember when, or remember when this happened, and we can kind of joke and laugh about it now because God has done that healing. He's restored my family. He has restored me. There is no way I could make it 4 years without God. There is absolutely no way. When COVID hit, I was like, oh, help me, Jesus. I'm be stuck in this house with these kids, my husband. Like, how on earth am I going to survive this? Because that was my coping mechanism. I just would go drink. Then I didn't have to stress it or worry about it. But God showed up. And I often think back to when I first got sober. I don't even know what time I'm supposed to shut up.
You're fine. You're good.
Okay, I'm like, I don't even know. They told me 35 minutes, but I didn't even look at the clock.
It's
like
5 to
do this
7.
or something.
Okay.
I can talk. Ask Miss Vanessa. See, look, the alarm. But right after I had gotten sober, I was reading in Proverbs, which is my favorite book. Y'all don't need to know that, but Proverbs 26:11 is a really weird, awkward, random verse. Probably no one is ever going to say that's their favorite verse but me. But Proverbs 26:11 says, as a dog returns to its vomit, so does a fool to their folly. And so if you look at that verse, you think of a dog, dogs eat their vomit. That's utterly disgusting. But in God's mind, if he has delivered me from that, he has delivered me from that hurt, he has delivered me from that addiction, it is just as disgusting to him for me to turn back from what he has already pulled me out of. He has already pulled me out of that mess. He has already pulled me out of that. And it is just as gross to him as me watching my dog eat her vomit off the floor, as if I go back to what he has already delivered me from. So, I mean, I can say that's probably one of my favorite verses, because as I was reading that, the Lord just spoke to my heart. It was like, look, you're nasty if you go back. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's really the gist of my story. I started coming here, and Jeff was here. He's not here tonight. I'll yell at him later. Jeff Reynolds, and I know normally it's like guys sponsor guys and girls sponsor girls, but Jeff's been our family friend for years and years and years, and he was with, like, he saw all of this go down, and so he sponsored me and helped me. He even spoke with my husband. It's like, look, man, you're gonna have to settle down a little bit, talk to God. But I'm thankful. I didn't make notes because that's just not who I am. But this place is amazing, and I'm thankful for it. And I'm thankful for all of you guys here and the Christ-centered relationship, because you don't find that a lot of places. So if you're struggling, one, don't go back. Don't go back. Proverbs 26:11. Just remember that crazy lady told you that it's just as gross. And are you all in? Are you all in? Because you can't expect God to do a work in your life if you don't fully commit, if you don't fully give it to him. If you just kind of want to give him this part of you or this part of you, he can't work with that. He can't mold you if you just give him a little bitty piece of that clay. You have to give him fully all in, no matter what it looks like, no matter if your entire family turns, no matter if your best friend doesn't speak to you, no matter if you lose your job, whatever it is, I promise you there's better. God has something way better in store. And God has taken my life in 4 years and has just amazingly turned it around, because to this day I'm all in. Whatever it is that he asked me to do, I want to be willing. I want to do it. I want to do it excitedly. I struggle with that because I like to argue. I'll be like, go pray for them. I'm like, oh, they're gonna think I'm weird. They're gonna think I'm weird anyway, so I should probably just go ahead and pray for them. But I guess that's it. Was I too short?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
You're fine.
But I mean, that's all I have to say. Just remember, be all in, and don't let your dog eat their vomit.